Every day means every day. My name is Brandon Burns, and in this video, I want to talk a little bit about a mistake that I've made in my life for many, many years. And this is a mistake that I think I really only got myself out of in the last couple of years. And even today, it's something that I still struggle with and have to be intentional and conscious about not falling into this trap any longer. Because this was something that earlier in my life was very destructive to my relationships, was very destructive to my friendships, and ended up being very destructive to myself, even though I did not know it at the time. And this mistake that I was making centers around the concept of judgment. And more specifically, I used to judge other people really harshly. Because the new age idea was, oh, you have no right to judge anybody. How dare you judge other people? And I always thought, man, that's so soft. Like, of course I have the right to judge other people because I need to know if you're somebody that I want influencing my life, influencing my thoughts, influencing my behaviors. I need to know that you're somebody who's aligned with my values and my beliefs and you're going somewhere, big places, same places I'm trying to go. Like, we got to make sure we're aligned here, and I have every right to judge you for those things. And I stand by that 100%, by the way. I still believe that to this day. But I think that I crossed the line in saying, okay, you don't believe what I believe, you don't value what I value. You're making these different decisions that I personally don't agree with. Therefore, that speaks to the intrinsic quality of your being. Like you as a human, your essence is tarnished in my eyes because you're making these choices and decisions that I don't agree with and that I think are irresponsible, that I think are hurtful to other people. And so I would put people off and push them away in this spirit of disdain almost because I was holding them to such a high standard and I was allowing myself to perceive it as, oh, they're just not as good people as I want to be around. See, there's a difference between making the determination about the quality of somebody's actions and if you would like that person to be around to influence your life versus the quality of somebody at their core, because their actions don't always reflect that, okay? And I think that took me a really, really long time to learn. Now, obviously, your actions are part of a reflection of your spirit, but really, really good people make really, really dumb choices and mistakes all the time. And I myself would be very high up on that list. Like I just said, I was judging people when I shouldn't have been. I was condemning people when I shouldn't have been. And I would like to think and hope and strive to be a good person, but I still made that mistake and made that dumb decision. So none of us are above it, is my point. And to go even a step further, I was obsessed with this concept of fairness. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it was just, I was born to conservative Christian parents in the South and that, that's just what they're all about. Like, oh, you do the crime, you pay the time. You know what I mean? And I just grew up with this deeply instilled concept of justice and fairness, that people should get what they deserve, right? Which is counter to grace. So justice is when you get what you deserve, and grace is when you don't get what you do deserve, right? And I had no concept of grace, only of justice and only of fairness. And as I've gotten older, as I mentioned over the last couple of years specifically, I've noticed more and more that if I hold myself to my own standards that I used to hold other people to, man, judgment always leads to a mirror on the wall. Judgment always leads to a mirror on the wall. Matter of fact, I want to read this to you. And this is from the Bible. I'm personally a believer, but I also believe that the underlying truth that these stories are communicating is far more important than any historical accuracy. So if that's not your thing, don't take offense to it. It's just where I'm getting some of these stories, but just look at the metaphor and the analogy and take it for what it is in that regard, right? So if you go to Matthew, this is Matthew 7, 1 through 3, it says, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way that you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." And then it goes on to talk about, well, how are you going to point out the speck in someone else's eye when there's a whole plank in your eye and you haven't even taken care of that yet? And so it's speaking to exactly what I used to struggle with, right? I was judging other people before I would judge myself. But I think those first two verses are so critical. The measure with which you use to judge others is the measure that will be used to judge you. Every single time that I've found myself having these demeaning or condescending thoughts about other people and the decisions that they make, I find myself later in life, sometimes it's the next day, sometimes it's the next month, sometimes it's years down the line, I find myself in a similar situation. I go, oh my God, I looked down on that person for the choices that they were making with no backstory on how they ended up there. Like, you pass a meth addict on the street and they're just strung out, homeless, they look cracked out, like they look like they haven't showered in 3 weeks. Like, it just looks bad. And you a lot of times we have this mentality of, oh, you were just a weak-minded person trying to escape. You just were trying to find a high. You just whatever. And you don't think about the fact that you are one decision away. Like, we just had a plane crash a couple of days ago, the thing at D.C. What if both your parents or your children were on that plane and you had nowhere to turn and you were just in a hell on earth and you wanted to feel better for 2 seconds and you tried it one time and that's how that happened? But you don't want to think like that. You just see that person and say, oh, I don't know what you went through. I don't know how you got here. And I'm going to disconnect the similarities we have as human beings. I'm going to mentally check out and view you as somebody totally and completely different from me. I'm going to view you down here and me up here and judge your decisions, not knowing that you might struggle just as bad. You might be dead already. You try meth one time, you might get so addicted, you might not even have the willpower that person has to go a week in between hits. You might have been dead already if that was you. You have no idea. But we want to judge, and we think that we have a right to judge. I'm telling you, judgment always leads to a mirror on the wall. Every single time I've done that, I end up in a situation and I say, you know what? I get it. I get it. I get it how people make these choices. I get it how people end up in these situations. So it's never a good idea, right? And here's the other thing that I wanted to read you. This one is actually from Luke, because I think that a lot of the time when we're judging others, that comes from that spirit of justice and fairness. Those tend to go hand in hand a lot of times. We're judging people because we think, oh, you did something wrong, therefore you deserve to be punished. You deserve to be called out. You deserve to be held accountable. You deserve all these other things. And you're not wrong. You probably do deserve it. But I think there's deeper nuance to that. And this is where the concept of grace comes into play. So this is from Luke chapter 15. And this one's a little bit longer. It says, and Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. He went to Vegas of the day. You know what I mean? After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. Everybody thinks you're going to be up forever. He went to Vegas, gambled it all the way. He was up 20,000, 30,000. And then the market crashed. 2008 hit. And he went, dang, I lost it all. He thought the good times were going to last forever. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of the country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. See, when you up, everybody loves you. And then all of a sudden you find yourself down and out, and nobody wants to lend a helping hand. Nobody cares about you the way they did when you were the hot topic at the time. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like the one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. So you see his pride collapsing within himself. He was prideful. He thought he'd go out there and do it all on his own. And now he's saying, you know what? I don't have to live like this. I'm going to go ask for help. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. And here you see a parent's love, right? He said, I don't care how much you've messed up, how many mistakes you made. I'm just happy you're safe and that you're back. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him, "What's going on?" "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you have never given me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost, and he is found." It's usually referred to as prodigal son, or the parable of the lost sons. And I struggle with this one for a really long time because, again, I'm big on fairness. And to me, I'm like, man, it doesn't make any sense that one son can do everything by the book, to the letter, his whole life, and get the same or lesser reward than the son who just screwed around his whole life. And then, once it didn't work out for him, but he got to go have all those experiences, but then, once it didn't work out real well for him, then he came back, and you're going to celebrate that guy? It didn't make sense to me. It didn't seem fair. It seems like the one who did everything right all along should have the compound interest built up of doing things right and therefore get the benefit from it. Two things. Number one, that last part is very important. Son, everything I have is mine. You already have access to all of this. I believe that when you do things the right way, when you are a good person, when you uphold your standards daily, not occasionally, you get intrinsic and inherent benefit from that. The other guy was stressed out. He was probably sad and lonely because he didn't have any real relationships because he was blowing all of his money on cocaine and hookers. The version of that in the day, pretty much. He was lonely. He was sad. I'm sure he was depressed. I'm sure he felt isolated. I'm sure he felt like a failure. I'm sure he felt like an outcast. I'm sure he felt belittled. I'm sure he felt embarrassed. So he's dealing with all of these things. He's getting an intrinsic punishment. He's still kind of getting he's getting his lot. Like, he's still reaping what he sowed. The other one, on the other hand, yes, he's working hard, but he has purposeful work. He has a family that loves him. He has a community. He has a support system. He's building success in his own way. So he's getting intrinsic benefits. Even though it might not look as flashy as he'd like it to be, he's still getting what he deserves for the most part, and the other guy's still getting what he deserves. So that's one thing that I think a lot of us don't think about when we hear stories like that, is the universe has a really funny way about being fair about things, even when it doesn't necessarily look like it. Like, you see this piece of trash celebrity blowing up and making all this money and having this crazy lifestyle, and it's like, yeah, but check back in 20 years. You see a snapshot. You're looking at a snapshot. I mean, if you look at a lot of these people's careers over 20 years, 30 years, the amount of people who, they go up and then they come back down. And their life is 10 times worse when they come back down because they had that experience and now they can't figure out how to get it back again. That's rough. That's rough. You never know how successful somebody truly is until the force of time has been allowed to play itself out a little bit. You truly never know. There's people that look like they're winning that I promise you 5 years from now, you're going to be like, what happened to that guy? Oh, he had a bankruptcy? Oh, he had a divorce? He ended up going to jail? He's an addict now? What happened? Because what it looked like wasn't really what it was under the surface. So you got to be really careful of that. The universe has a funny way of being fair when all is said and done. Here's the thing that really changed my mind about that scripture, though. I was talking about this concept of, man, I just don't get it. I don't like this one. I struggle with it. I don't think it's fair with somebody. I said, the good son who did everything by the book, he should have more. And it's one of my best friends in life. And she looked at me and she said, are you really prideful enough to think that you're the good son there? Took me completely aback. She said, are you really that much of a prideful narcissist that you think in that story, the analogy they're trying to make is that you're the good son? Okay, keep believing that. We're all the guy that screws it up. We're all the guy that made the mistakes. We're all, I don't care how freaking goody two-shoes you are, we're all the guy that screwed up. We're all the guy that's missed the mark at some point in our life. By the way, the word sin means, it's an old archery term, it means to miss the mark. And we've all done that in our lives, haven't we? We've all hurt people. We've all not lived up to our potential. We've all not lived up to who we probably should have been in any given moment. None of us are perfect. But we look at people who have these more dramatic sins. They're more public, or they're more shocking. And we say, them, we should judge them. When the same sickness that caused them to sin, you got the same thing. You got the same issue. You got the same disease. But because it looks different on you, you see it through the rosy colored glass. You want to start talking about their speck before you deal with your plank. It never works out because, as I've said many times in this video, judgment always leads to a mirror on the wall. So with that being said, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it gave you a little bit of perspective, and I hope that you'll approach people with a little bit more grace from here on out. Now, ironically, I don't want to get preachy. Ironically, you're not really supposed to have that much grace with yourself. You're supposed to have grace with other people. You have to ask God for forgiveness of your own sins. You can forgive other people's sins, but you can't forgive your own sins. That's a theological thing. We'll get to it in another video. But be more graceful with others. Be more forgiving of others. Be a little bit more tolerant of others. Be a little bit more accepting of others. And just understand that whatever situation that they find themselves in, you're one bad day away from being in the exact same spot, or worse, or way worse. The measure that you use is the measure that will be used for you. At the end of the day, we all make mistakes. And that's why we need each other. That's why we need each other to be nice to each other. That's why we need each other to be good to one another. That's why we need each other to support one another, to help one another out, to reach down and lend a helping hand. That's why we need each other. Because ain't none perfect. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. My name is Brandon Burns. Until next time, remember, every day means every day. Peace.